The desert moon of Kerith. 9 was not a place where heroes were made. It was where they were buried. Endless dunes of metallic dust stretched beneath a dim red sun, the horizon shimmering with heat and radiation storms. The war had passed through here like a blade, leaving behind wreckage, ghosts, and silence. Elias Varn had chosen this place deliberately. He didn't come for glory. He came to disappear. A former salvage pilot turned scavenger, Elias spent his days combing through the remains of crashed ships, abandoned outposts, and the occasional battlefield. There was profit in war's leftovers, broken weapons, intact power cores, rare alloys. Enough to survive. Not enough to be noticed. That was the point. His ship, the Wanderer, rested half-buried in a dune, its hull patched together from a dozen different vessels. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. And out here, that was all that mattered. On that day, the scanners pinged something unusual. Not scrap. Not debris. A life sign. Elias frowned, adjusting the cracked display. That's not possible. Kerith. 9 had been evacuated months ago. No military. No civilians. Nothing living should remain. And yet, the signal persisted, weak, flickering, but unmistakably human. He hesitated. Out here, human didn't always mean safe. But curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, pushed him forward. He grabbed his rifle, slung a med pack over his shoulder, and stepped into the blistering wind. The signal led him to a crater several kilometers from his ship. It looked like something had slammed into the surface at high velocity, metal fragments scattered across the sand, half melted from re-entry. The remains of a drop pod. Military grade. Elias approached cautiously, scanning the area. No movement. No additional life signs. Just the howl of the wind. Then he saw her. She lay partially buried beneath debris, her armor scorched and fractured. One arm was pinned under a twisted piece of metal, and her helmet had cracked open, revealing a pale, blood-streaked face. She wasn't dead, but she was close. Elias knelt beside her, checking her pulse. Faint. Damn it, he muttered. What were you doing out here? Her uniform was unfamiliar, sleek, black, with silver insignias he didn't recognize. Not Alliance. Not coalition. Something else. Something important. He should have walked away. Anyone involved in whatever conflict had reached this forgotten moon was trouble. The kind of trouble that got people like him killed. But as he looked at her, at the shallow rise and fall of her chest, the blood seeping into the sand, he made his choice. Yeah, he sighed. I'm going to regret this. Getting her back to the Wanderer was not easy. The storm worsened, visibility dropping to near zero. Elias dragged her across the dunes, stopping frequently to catch his breath and keep her alive. Twice, he thought she'd died. Twice, she hadn't. By the time he reached the ship, he was exhausted, dehydrated, and furious with himself. He sealed the hatch behind them and activated the med bay, a small, cramped compartment barely capable of handling serious injuries. Don't die on me now, he muttered, lifting her onto the table. The scanner flickered as it analyzed her condition. Multiple fractures. Internal bleeding. Severe burns. Neural trauma. Elias let out a low whistle. You're a mess. He worked quickly, stabilizing her vitals, sealing wounds, administering what little advanced medicine he had left. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Hours passed. Then, finally, the machine beeped softly. Stable. Elias leaned back, rubbing his eyes. Well, you're not dead. He studied her more closely now. She looked ordinary, not like a soldier. Her face was calm, almost peaceful, despite the injuries. Dark hair clung to her forehead, and her features were sharp, almost regal. He shook his head. Doesn't matter who you are. You're lucky I found you." He turned away, heading for the cockpit. Behind him, her eyes opened. She watched him in silence. Her vision was blurred at first, her body heavy and unresponsive. Pain radiated through her limbs, but it was distant, muted by whatever crude treatment he had given her. The man who had saved her moved with the casual confidence of someone used to surviving alone. Not military, not trained. And yet, he had pulled her from the brink of death. Interesting. She tried to speak, but her voice failed. Instead, she observed. The ship was old, patched together but functional. The systems were outdated, but cleverly modified. Whoever this man was, he was resourceful and reckless. Rescuing her had been a mistake. A very dangerous mistake. Elias was halfway through recalibrating the navigation system when he heard it. A voice. "You should have left me." He froze. Slowly he turned. She was awake, propped slightly upright on the med table, watching him with piercing eyes. "Yeah," he said, scratching the back of his head. "I get that a lot." Her gaze didn't waver. "You don't understand." "Probably not," he admitted. "But you were dying." Seemed like a good reason to step in. She studied him for a long moment. "Why?" she asked. Elias shrugged. "Because I could." Silence. Then, unexpectedly, the faintest hint of a smile touched her lips. "That," she said quietly, "is a rare answer." Her name, she told him, was Lyra. Nothing more. No rank. No affiliation. No explanation for how she ended up crashing onto a dead moon in the middle of nowhere. Elias didn't push. Out here, everyone had secrets. Days passed as she recovered. She healed faster than he expected, faster than should have been possible. Within a week, she was walking. Within 2, she was exploring the ship and asking questions. "You live like this?" she asked one day, standing in the cramped galley. "Like what?" "Alone. Drifting from system to system." Elias shrugged. "It's quiet. Is that what you want?" He hesitated. "It's what I need." She nodded as if she understood. But there was something in her eyes, something calculating. Watching. Waiting. The trouble arrived on the 15th day. Elias was in the cockpit when the sensors screamed to life. Incoming ships. Multiple. Fast. "Damn it," he muttered, pulling up the feed. 3 cruisers dropped out of warp above the planet, their hulls gleaming with polished obsidian metal. He didn't recognize the design, but he recognized power when he saw it. "These aren't scavengers." Behind him, Lyra's voice was calm. "They've found me." Elias turned. "You want to explain that?" She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "There isn't time." The ships began descending. Weapon systems lit up, targeting his position. "Oh, that's just great," Elias said. "You bring friends?" "They're not my friends." "Yeah, I figured." The first blast struck the dunes nearby, sending a shockwave through the ship. Elias grabbed the controls. "Hold on." The Wanderer wasn't built for combat, but Elias knew how to fly. He launched the ship just as another blast tore through the sand where they'd been moments before. The engines screamed in protest, but they held. "Where do we go?" he shouted. Lyra stepped into the cockpit. "Up. Up. That's your plan?" "Yes." "Fantastic." He pushed the engines to their limit, the ship climbing through the storm-choked sky. The cruisers followed. Faster. Stronger. Closing in. "We're not outrunning those," Elias said. "Got any better ideas?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the center of the cockpit and placed her hand against the wall. The ship responded. Lights flickered. Systems surged. The ancient consoles lit up with new energy. Elias stared. "What did you just do?" "Trust me, she said softly. The Wanderer accelerated, beyond its limits, beyond what should have been possible. The cruisers fell behind. Elias' jaw dropped. That's not how engines work. No, Lyra said. It isn't. They broke orbit in seconds. The stars stretched as the ship jumped into warp. Silence filled the cockpit. Elias slowly turned to her. Okay, he said. You're going to explain everything. Now. Lyra looked at him. For the first time, there was no mask. No deflection. Just truth. I am not just a soldier, she said. No kidding. I am the sovereign. Elias blinked. The what? The ruler of the Galactic Imperium. He stared at her, then laughed. Good one. Really? You almost had me. I am not joking. The laughter died in his throat. You're serious? Yes. Elias leaned back in his seat. I rescued the most powerful person in the galaxy. Yes. And now people with warships are trying to kill you. Yes. He ran a hand over his face. Yeah. I knew I should have stayed in bed that day. The truth unraveled slowly. Lyra, her full title unpronounceable in any human language, was the supreme ruler of an empire spanning thousands of systems. She had been betrayed. A faction within her own command had attempted a coup, ambushing her flagship and leaving her for dead on Kareth. 9. They underestimated me, she said. And they didn't expect some random scavenger to find you, Elias added. Correct. He exhaled. So what now? Lyra met his gaze. Now we take back what is mine. The journey that followed would change everything. Elias was no longer just a scavenger. He became a pilot, a strategist, a symbol. Word spread of the human who had saved the sovereign, who stood beside her, who defied fleets and survived. And when they finally returned, when Lyra reclaimed her throne, she did not stand alone. Ending. The throne room was silent. Thousands watched as Lyra ascended the steps, her presence commanding, undeniable. The traitors had fallen. The empire stood restored. She turned not to her generals, not to her advisors, but to Elias. Why? She asked him one last time. Why did you save me? Elias shrugged, the same simple answer as before. Because I could. She smiled, and before the entire galaxy, she bowed, not as a ruler, but as someone who had been saved. And in that moment, the legend of humanity was rewritten, not as conquerors, not as warriors, but as something far rarer, something even an empire could not command, compassion. And from that day forward, the galaxy would never underestimate a human again.